Welcome to October Scaries, where I'm watching and reviewing these 13 movies that I've never seen before. And today we're going to talk about Eyes Without a Face. So, big surprise for me. So, when I put this list together, all I did was read the summary for each movie. So, imagine my surprise when this movie starts and it is in French. I am seeing French names, and then I see avec instead of with, and I see directeur instead of director, and I'm like, wait a second, it's in French. So if you're watching this for whatever reason without seeing the movie, it is in French with English subtitles. But it was a time. So we open on a woman driving, and there's a body in the back of the car. And come to find out, she's going to dispose of this body in the River Seine. And then following that, we meet a man named Dr. Genessier, who is giving a speech about exsanguination. And then he is taken aside by the police to go and identify the body because he lost his wife 4 years ago. And he recently lost his daughter after operating on her, I think they said, or maybe like she ran away. So they call her to identify the body. He does. He says that's his daughter. Right away, I'm suspicious. And so then he leaves. I'm suspicious of him. Like the look on his face, I'm like, is it your daughter? And so then when he steps outside of the police station or the morgue, he runs into this man and who is also there to see if this is his daughter. And Dr. Genessier is like, no, it's not your daughter, it's mine. And so that man is heartbroken because his daughter is missing too. So Dr. Genessier gets home and we meet his daughter, whose name is Christiane, who wears a mask covering her face. And we learned that a long time ago, I don't remember how long ago, I don't remember if they said, Dr. Genessier he was driving erratically and he got into a car accident and Christiane became disfigured. And so now she wears a mask over her face to hide the hideousness. And her father, Dr. Genessier, is hell-bent on finding a face for her, and he, with the assistance of his assistant Alida, I think her name is, they are kidnapping young girls all around Paris, and he's experimenting on them by removing their face and then grafting it on Christiane's face. So Dr. Genessier is playing God with his daughter. And Christiane is in hell. She literally says that she wants to die. And this movie is horrific when you think about the fact that, so he will put these faces on Christiane, and then eventually they start to decay and they get infected. And so imagine the horror, the body horror of watching your face. You know, it looks fine, and then like it starts to decay, it starts to rot, it gets infected until eventually you're back down to the pink meat or the white meat underneath. That's horrifying. Doesn't want to be here anymore. She's here against her will. Her father is playing God. The imagery in this movie is actually pretty great. Christiane doesn't move like a human. She doesn't look human either. Like she looks like she's not of our world, which makes sense considering her existence. So first of all, she wears this long dress where you can't really see her feet, so it looks like she's floating everywhere, like she's a ghost. And her facial expressions, it's like she's curious about, like she's always cocking her head and looking this way and that way, like she's curious about humanity and these people who belong to a world that she doesn't belong to anymore. And Christiane is a victim. She's also complicit as she can be, in the fact that like she sees these girls get kidnapped, she knows what her father's doing, and she just waits for them to die so that he can do what he wants, which is like he wants to fix his mistake of getting into a car accident and her getting hurt. And he also experimented on the assistant at one point. He gave her a new face, but Christiane says that Alida wasn't totally disfigured, but her surgery scar is on her neck, which to me sounds like she got fixed from the neck up. But Christiane says, she already had a face to begin with, so like her surgery wasn't as horrific. That's Christiane's reading of it. Throughout all this, there's the police who are not really doing nothing. Like they put together a sting operation complete with an innocent young woman who they asked to go undercover. Tell me why they lose her. They lose her. Alida kidnaps her, and first they kidnapped a first woman that we saw, And that woman ended up throwing herself out of the window. They kidnap a second girl because this whole time Christian's fiance was suspicious because Christian called him and she's supposed to be dead. Like, he attended her funeral. And so he goes to the police. The police eventually, believe him, set up a sting, botch it. The girl gets kidnapped, is almost operated on, and Christian helps her escape. When she decides she's had enough, she takes her power, she kills the leader. And then, but let me talk about, before I get to the rest of it, the surgery. They took their time showing us the tracing of the face, the scalping, the inserting of the forceps, the slow removal. Like, that scene was so slow, so meticulous, and it gave you nothing to focus on but the horror of what was happening to this young woman and what Christine was being subjected to watch, and then what was eventually going to happen to her. So that was fantastic. And so eventually Christian, like I said, gets rid of the assistant, kills her, and then releases the girl, lets her escape, and then she releases. So this whole time there were these dogs that were caged animals, like Christian. These caged dogs who the father had been experimenting on as well, like removing their skin, doing animal experiment to better his process. There are also these caged birds, like Christian. And so she sets the dogs free, she sets the birds free. The father, who had gone outside because the police came knocking, and then he lied to them and they believed it and they went away. The father gets mauled by the dogs and gets disfigured. And so the movie ends like he's disfigured. He has one eyeball popping out. And so he ends up the same way that Christian is, except he's actually dead. And so Christian, the movie ends with her like holding a candle, and then a bird on her arm, like very Disney, except horrible, which I guess is like Grimm's fairy tales. A bird, perched on her hand, candle, and she's walking off into the woods. And that's the end of it. This movie feels different. It doesn't seem to follow any tropes. It literally seemed to just wanted to tell you Christian's reality. So yes, it has a beginning, a middle, a climax, and an end, but to me it feels different. Yes, Christian wanders off into the woods and has her freedom, free of her father. So, but now there are questions. It's like, so does she still want to die? Like, is she wandering off to the River Seine to drown herself? Like, she's walking off and it's peaceful and the music is playing, but it's also kind of ominous. Like, is she going to keep walking until someone sees her? Is she going to end up at a, because this is the 60s, this movie came out in 1960. Is she going to end up in a mental hospital? Is she going to be, someone's going to find her and she's going to end up back on an operating table and experimented on again? What is going to happen to her? Like, it's an ending, but it's not optimistic. It's more like, here you go, off into the darkness in the forest. So, very interesting, very different. I rated a 2 out of 5, but I do recommend watching it. The reason why I rated a 2 out of 5 is just because, I don't know, the way it made me feel. I didn't really feel anything like it was interesting, but comparing to even The Mill, comparing it to all the other movies I've seen, that influences my rating. But also, as a standalone movie, it doesn't do anything. Like I said, it's just a look into Christian's reality. And it's below average to me, even though it's good. By the way, fun fact that I learned, John Carpenter, who makes the Halloween movies, says that he doesn't remember, but he thinks he may have gotten inspiration for whatever that character's name is. I'm not going to say Jason. No, Michael Myers' mask from this movie. So that's very interesting. So I do recommend watching this movie. If you want something different, if you want to see horror from another culture, definitely recommend Eyes Without a Face. It's a good watch, at least once. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. If you have watched movies, non-American horror movies, please let me know. If you're going to say Train to Busan, as you can see, it is on my list and I have already watched it. And I'm going to get to it.